everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to dive into the absolutely incredible story of Matsuyama Castle. Now, this isn't just another fortress. Oh no. It's a true masterpiece of engineering, of military smarts, and just unbelievable determination. We're talking about a project on a scale that is seriously hard to wrap your head around. Okay, so let's just get right to the craziest part of this story. Before they even thought about laying a single stone for the castle itself, the builders did something that sounds, well, impossible. They moved an entire river. I mean, why in the world would you even think to do that? Well, that's where this amazing story really kicks off. So you might be thinking, the hero of our story is some famous samurai lord, right? Well, not at first. Our first hero is a brilliant engineer, a guy named Adachi Shigenobu. He was basically the lead project manager, and he was so good at what he did that people called him the god of civil engineering. His first job wasn't to build something up, but to completely reshape the land it was going to sit on. Now, moving the Ishitagawa River wasn't just some random idea. It was an incredibly smart 4-in-1 strategy. First off, the river was always flooding the plain where they wanted to build the castle town. Moving it meant that whole area would finally be safe. Second, the old dried-up riverbed, perfect for new rice paddies. That meant more food and more money for the domain. And third, and this is the military genius part, the new river channel created a giant natural moat. It was city planning, economics, and defense all rolled into one epic project. And if you need any proof of just how massive his achievement was, just look at this. Adachi's project was such a game changer that the local people, to honor him, actually renamed the larger Io River, the one his new channel flowed into, the Shikanobu River. He didn't just move a river. He literally left his name on the map forever. But, of course, a mega project like this is never easy. And they hit a wall. I mean, a literal wall of solid rock. To carve out the new path for the river, Adachi's crew had to cut through this incredibly hard sandstone at a spot called Iwazaki, and the tools they had back then, they just weren't cutting it. It looked like the whole project was going to grind to a halt. So how do you break a mountain before dynamite was even a thing? Well, you use some clever physics. Adachi used this ancient technique called the fire-heat method. It was brilliant, but man, it was slow. Imagine this. For days, they'd build these enormous bonfires right on top of the rock, heating it up until it was blazing hot. Then, all at once, they'd douse it with cold water. That sudden temperature shock would crack the rock. Only then could the workers get in there with their hammers and break it up. It was like a slow-motion explosion, done over and over and over again. All right, so the foundation is finally secure. The land itself has been tamed. Now, the commander, Kato Yoshiaki, could finally start building his dream castle. And this guy was no armchair general. He was a veteran of some of the biggest battles of the era, and he poured every single lesson he learned on the battlefield into the castle's design, making it a fortress that was built to be completely unbeatable. One of his most revolutionary ideas was this, the Nobori Ishigaki, or climbing stone walls. See, with most mountain castles, the big weakness is always the steep, undefended slopes. An enemy could just ignore the main gate and try to scramble up the side. But Yoshiaki, who had actually seen this technique used in Korea, came up with a brilliant solution. He built 2 massive stone walls that ran straight up the mountainside, basically creating a walled corridor that forced any attackers right into his pre-planned kill zones. And that was just the beginning. The whole castle is just packed with these clever defensive tricks. The walls are built in a zigzag, folding screen style, so there are no blind spots for attackers to hide in. The arrow slits in the walls are designed so you can flip them around to shoot at enemies, whether they're coming or going. But my personal favorite, the hidden gates. These were secret doors that let defenders suddenly burst out and attack the enemy from behind, right when they thought they'd made it inside. Just genius. But now we get to one of the castle's biggest mysteries. The original plan, and what Kato Yoshiaki likely started building, was a massive 5-story main tower. But just a few decades later, around 1642, it was totally remodeled into the 3-story version. So what gives? Why did they make it smaller? Well, historians have a few ideas. The first one is just practical. Maybe the ground on the mountaintop just wasn't stable enough to hold a building that huge and heavy. Another theory is that a big earthquake might have damaged or destroyed the original 5-story version. And then there's the political angle. By this point, Japan was at peace. Having a huge, intimidating military tower might have seemed like a challenge to the shogun's power, so they might have downsized it as a show of respect. You'd think after all that, the castle would get a break, right? Nope. Just when its story seemed to be settled,
disaster literally struck from the sky. On New Year's Day in 1784, a lightning bolt hit the main keep, and the whole thing burned to the ground. But even that wasn't the end of its story. Just look at this timeline. It really shows you what a roller coaster this castle's life has been. From starting construction way back in 1602, to the remodel, to that devastating fire, it would take a shockingly long time before it would finally rise from the ashes.
Get this, it took 70 years. 70! That's how long it took to finally rebuild the main keep. Money problems and other issues just kept pushing it back. So the castle that you see standing today was finally finished in 1854, which actually makes it the very last complete feudal castle keep ever built in Japan. And that huge time gap, we're talking 250 years, meant the new castle was completely different from the old one. The first castle was a pure fortress, built for war. You can see it in its stonework, which used rough, practical stones. But the 1854 version was built in an era of peace. It wasn't really a weapon anymore, it was a symbol of power and prestige. And its stonework shows that. It's made of perfectly cut, seamlessly fitting stones. It's a much more advanced and much more expensive style. The castle went from a weapon to a work of art. So that brings us to today. When you visit Matsuyama Castle, you're not just looking at one building, you're looking at all these different layers of history, one on top of the other. And if you know what you're looking for, you can become a history detective and read the story right there in the stones. Here's a pro tip for you. Take close attention to the stone walls. In the older parts of the castle, you'll see the rougher, more natural-looking uchikomi haji stonework from the 1600s. But up on the main platform, which was rebuilt in the 1850s, you'll see the beautiful, perfectly smooth kyurikomi haji style. You can literally touch two different centuries of technology standing right next to each other. So what's on the absolute must-see list? Well, for one, it's one of only 12 original castle keeps left in all of Japan. You gotta see those super rare climbing walls. They're only found at 2 castles in the country. Keep an eye out for the roof tiles with the Tokugawa family crest on them, and check out the only surviving watchtower of its kind in Japan. It's like a mini prototype for a castle. And of course, you just can't beat that incredible 360-degree view from the very top. The famous haiku poet Masaoka Shiki, who was from Matsuyama, wrote this line that I think just perfectly captures the feeling of the place. It's more than just a building. It's a landmark that towers over the city and is a huge part of its identity. You know, in the end, the story of Matsuyama Castle is about so much more than just building walls. It started with that unbelievable project to create a solid foundation by moving a river, an act that secured the future for the entire region. It's a powerful reminder that the most impressive things we see are only possible because of the enormous, often invisible, foundational work that came first. It really makes you think, what are the foundations we're building in our own lives today?